Hello, welcome to Matters of Decorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. These are a little bit late again this month. I have a system I've worked up where I can record a number of these in a closer sequence than the usual once a week I used to do, and then I can release them, scheduled releases through YouTube. Very useful tool. Problem is that while I plan to do these at the beginning of the month, release them in a rational manner like a decent human being, that's not generally how things have worked out. Let's see how January goes. Things crop up. In this particular video, I'm going to discuss what things cropped up and then scot it up a little bit and take it in a direction that can be useful for game contemplation or storyline or what have you. It's going to get weird. Follow along. So, my mom has been in the hospital for most of December. A few years ago, 3 or so, she was diagnosed with a heart valve that was deteriorating, calcifying actually. And that's usually bad enough, but it's the aortic valve. It's one of the main ones, the valve controlling the flow of blood into the heart itself. There are no pleasant solutions for that problem. And my mom, despite having been the person who saw me through my difficulties with cancer, well, one of many, but she stuck by me and made sure that I did the things I had to do. She didn't want to do this. She didn't want to take care of it. She developed other problems in the meantime, most of which are traceable to having the failing heart valve. So when she became anemic and started to have transfusions for this anemia, that can be traced to the heart valve. And after a ridiculously difficult trip to get her a transfusion, which went south badly, not that she got the wrong blood or they gave it to her too quickly, it was the valve again, just putting that much fluid into the system. When the heart can't process that much fluid, the fluid's going to go someplace. And it's going to go where it wants to go and not where you want it to go. And the fluid will go to the lungs. It doesn't care. It's fluid. She recovered from that, but the heart valve had to get fixed. That was this last weekend. It has been going over and taking care of the house and taking turns with my brother, and I caught a cold in the meantime, right when she goes into the hospital for the surgery, so I can't do as much as I would like to as far as being there and picking her up and taking her home. Hopefully I'm over this by next week so I can help more. The procedure that she had to get the heart valve replaced, which was performed Saturday morning. Gosh, no, Friday morning. Just a couple days ago. Nothing short of absolutely amazing, and a real testament to where we are at with medical technology these days. She had to go to a facility called Good Samaritan in downtown Los Angeles, just off of Wilshire. And at this facility, this procedure is done 2 or 3 times a day. I mean, it's routine, which is kind of remarkable. I'm not going to call it a surgery because there's no cutting, none. They access a vein or an artery or both, depending on what they need to get into, and that's about it. She was under general anesthetic. They were controlling her breathing and went in through a blood vessel in the groin and ran a line up to her heart, several actually. There was a temporary pacemaker. They just ran wires up so they could control the heart's rhythm. Not for long, just for a couple of seconds. And they ran the replacement up the same line. Wasn't big. Uh, and rather than remove any of the old valve, they took advantage of the calcification and the damage to the valve and just rammed the replacement in place, just jammed it in the middle of the old valve and let the old valve and the calcification and everything literally cement it in place. The new valve is mostly organic, made out of an ox's heart. Go figure. Always said that she had the heart of an ox, and now, well, partially that's correct. A little bit of metal caging around the edges so that it can adhere properly and become involved in the old valve system. An hour to prep and make sure that she's properly under and that they've got everything ready to do imaging. They had ultrasound from an esophageal probe as well as over the top, so they had a complete image of everything that they had to do. And then running the stuff and doing the insertion and everything, that was 15 minutes. The doctor came out early. It was all textbook. She's fine. Um, Still recovering from being under a general anesthetic. She's a mature, older woman. I won't say how old because she'd kill me. But she's coming out of the general a little slower than they would like. She'll be in the hospital in a couple of days. Not the best way to spend your Christmas. Not the worst. It was ridiculously easy for us. I mean, there was the stress of knowing this was going on and the tension of someone that you love being in less than optimal shape. There was a 3% chance that something might have gone wrong. There was a slightly higher percentage chance that the procedure, because the aortic valve is right next to the natural pacemaker in the heart, that maybe they would disrupt the natural rhythm of her heart and she would need to receive an artificial pacemaker. I don't think that's happened. And they generally know within a day or so. So she dodged all the pitfalls. My brother and sister-in-law and I were waiting. We went to lunch. There's a nice Mexican restaurant just a block away from Good Samaritan, La Padilla. I had the chimichanga, really amazingly good. If you go, get the guacamole appetizer. Completely worth it. This procedure is commonplace. Granted, the valve in her heart, the new valve, costs more than your average car these days, not to mention the rest of the price of the procedure. But it costs so much that now that she's got it, she's got a certification. She can go to the place that manufactures them in Irvine and tour the facility and see exactly how it was made and get all the information necessary that she wants on this device, this meat-based device that is going to be the function of her heart from this point on. A big part of near future dystopian literature is the cyberpunk genre, as it were, is the medicinal aspect of it, the medical advances that are pretty much assumed to be a part of this future. Things that enhance human performance and encourage more activity. Bigger, stronger, better, faster, from the $6 million man to Cyborg from the Justice League. We envision these amazing medical procedures. You know, Back to the Future, Doc Brown went and got his blood replaced, and he was young now, and everything is fine. And while we're watching this stuff on the screen or reading about it in the books, oh, we got a metal arm with claws in it that you can punch through. You've got the Yamaha sports heart, so now we can, I was 100 feet away from the cath lab where they installed a new valve in my mother's heart through an incision in her groin into one of her veins. 20 years ago, almost exactly 20 years ago, I sat in a waiting room with my mom at the cardiac care unit of the Brotman Medical Center while my dad was getting a quadruple bypass. And that, granted, it's a much more complicated procedure, but that was devastatingly traumatic. And the knowing what he went through, and that's one of the reasons I've really dedicated myself to trying very hard not to have a heart attack by the time I'm 50. I mean, not to have a heart attack, period, but both my father and my brother had heart attacks by 50. I'd really like to avoid that. I've got about 6 months. I'm doing pretty good. And when my dad was in there in recovery, because they levered open his rib cage and taken veins out of his leg and part of an artery so they could retool the blood vessels around his heart because they were clogged, uh, calcified, gone. He'd had problems before that, but there's this rare thing that happens sometimes that if you are starting to have a blockage around the heart and you exercise and try and stay active, you can grow a corollary, a new blood vessel around the blockage. He'd done that, but it only lasted for so long because my dad liked him some ribs and every other form of food. And they closed up and into recovery ward, and he had a month-long climb back to function. There was a guy a couple of beds over. They couldn't close him. They levered his rib cage open, done the work, and they had to keep working his heart manually, sometimes by hand, just to keep it going. They brought him to the recovery room and covered him with a cloth so that his family didn't have to see what they were doing on the inside, to give them time to come in and say goodbye. That's not what you want to see next to a loved one of yours in recovery. Those procedures are still traumatic, but it's been 20 years. The amount of repair that they could have done arthroscopically at this point in time, using artificial blood vessels, as opposed to having to take blood vessels out of his leg. We've come a long way. In my lifetime, we've come a long way. It's not hard to envision this cyberpunky future where, yeah, my heart's kind of okay, but I could use a better one. Anything you can do to jazz it up, Doc? Can I get a turbocharger? And that's looking at the positive aspects of what this medical technology brings. They implanted a device in my mom's body well, if you don't count the prep time in the catheter lab. Um, 30 minutes. It required control of her heartbeat for just a few seconds. It required the ability for them to intervene and to sense what's going on. What could you implant in someone without them knowing about it? You know, one of the things that is a trope in cyberpunk near future literature, you know, you've got the bomb that gets put in the next to the cortex or by the medulla or even just around the jugular to induce someone to do as they're asked, or explosives in the body to whether they know it or not, so that you have a human weapon at this point in time. You know, that's always been, you know, that's a traumatic thing. That's a difficult thing to do. That's beyond the reach of what we consider rational medicine and well in the realm of fiction, and not anymore. You're writing a game, a cyberpunk game or a near modern, it doesn't have to be that far in advance of where we're at now. It doesn't have to be a science fiction-y, Star Trek-y, Star Wars, way in the future, science fantasy kind of, well, we imagine this might be possible. No, it's possible. I am thrilled that this level of medical technology is available. I still have a mother as a result, and I'm super glad for it. You know, I still have a cold. You know, I can't go take a pill to make that go away. I can treat the symptoms, but I'm still sick. Heart valve needs replacing, half an hour. You got a cold, sorry. Um, but even though I'm thrilled to see this, there are the procedure that my mom went under. There were 500 points of data that had to be collected and registered with federal agencies to ensure that everything was done to the safest and best practices of the procedure and of the organizations that monitor these procedures. It'd sure suck if someone were to deregulate that system so that, oh, the procedure might still be safe, but maybe some less savory things are done. There, just last week, a surgeon was charged with assault for lasering his initials into the livers of his patients. They found it out in 2 cases because those patients had to go back and get more work done. They're degenerating conditions, not a result of him lasering his initials, and that was essentially harmless. But how many people have his initials on his liver who will never know? Ethical lapse, morally incorrect, stroke of ego where it was least welcome, impinging upon someone's privacy by marking their internal organs. What if it wasn't such a big deal? What if surgeons routinely just, left a calling card? Maybe using metallic ink or something with a slightly denser substance than the tissue around it, so that on an X-ray or even an MRI, that, oh, look, Dr. Landers was here. He managed to he left us a calling card. Oh, that's, well, what if there are rude sayings on your organs? What if someone passes messages to other medical professionals that way? What if your lungs become a message board for the local respiratory ward? And the people who provided that item that is now keeping you alive, that left some advertising in you or on you, It's like, well, yes, we can do this procedure. It's going to cost you a lot. We can take a little bit off if you let us tattoo an ad on your side so that people know exactly what happened. Or if they'll just do that as a matter of course. Well, you signed the forms. Production of super soldiers who have enhanced hearts or who are induced to service by the use of a device which either threatens their life or, we're studying life forms, funguses, parasites that get inside of an ant's or caterpillar's system and chemically control their brains. Or, in some cases, physically control their bodies without their brains being involved, trapping them in there so that the parasite gets what it needs at the cost of the existence of the host. That's mechanisms that could eventually be adapted. Or wasps that perform brain surgery with our stingers, removing exactly the right part of a roach's brain to make it incapable of defending itself or doing anything other than what the wasp wants, which is eventually to lay eggs in it so that it'll have food, or the offspring will have food. I don't know if I'm the only person who sees a bridge between these things, but the better we get at medical technology, the longer lives we can have and the better quality of life we can have, but the potential for abuses. We just better hope society is better than that. And as an author and a game designer, it is my pleasure to be able to imagine a society where we're not, where those are tools to be used by a corporation or a government that has left the morality and ethics behind and just wants function and compliance and obedience. What if a corporation could make you only ever buy their products? Not because there aren't better products out there, but because you simply have no choice. Well, one, sorry these are all coming out at once. It's been a busy month. Two, my mom is going to be fine, and I'm super grateful for that. She should be home in a day or two. Three, these are some ideas that may percolate through game systems or stories that I write, and feel free to explore these yourself. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you have ideas of your own on the use or misuse of medical technology, or where this is taking us as a society, go ahead, leave me a comment. Questions, comments, things you'd like to hear me talk about, go ahead and leave me a comment. You'll love leaving me a comment. I'll love getting one. If you really enjoyed the video and would like to see these videos when they come out, please hit the subscribe button. If you do hit the subscribe button, you might want to hit the notification bell so you see exactly when the videos come out and are alerted to this. If you really dug the videos, I invite you to hit me up on my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum, and consider donating. Absolutely anything helps and allows me to make better videos more often. Thank you for watching. More to come shortly. I'm Scott Corum. This is What Has Mattered to Me, and I will see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.